I have kind of a feeling I'm going to have to make the title for this like an answer type of reading, almost as if I'm going to be answering a question here through this message. So if you're here for that answer, don't just leave when you hear it. It's probably more complicated than a specific answer or a simple solution. Also, for those who keep asking, this is very random, but for those who keep asking if my titles are changing, there's a fun fact I want you to know is that YouTube recently made a feature where creators can test A and B titles. So I'm having a lot of fun with that. It's like basically I'll put in 3 random titles that I feel I resonate with, and then YouTube decides a winner. So that's why they're changing like that. Is you were just in the group that originally saw the title that didn't win, quote unquote. Sorry. Anyway, I'm a total nerd for A and B and usability testing, but back to the reading. I just wanted to clarify that. I keep getting that in the comments. What I feel right away from this is going to be specific to 2 groups. This is going to be a group specific type of read. There's energy containers here that are being highlighted, and it is revolving around these groups and their experiences with other people. That seems to be the theme here. The first group I'm getting is those who have had a past where they've had belonging. They have at one point felt like they belong somewhere, and that's changed from where you are now. It doesn't have to be that you belonged deeply. It's just that there's a change here. The important thing that's showing through is there's a contrast from where you've been and where you are now. It developed, it changed in some way. So we're going to call the first group that shifted into this less belonging space. We're going to call you being liked less because that just makes it easier. 3 words, make it simple. The second group, the second container that I'm being shown here has no contrast at all. So nothing has shifted, meaning you didn't have a change that happened. You were simply given a circumstance early on where you were perhaps born into not belonging, not being liked, or that sense of belonging just never happened for you. And so thus it hasn't changed. You still are feeling that same consistency throughout your life. This group here feels nothing has changed. There's no contrast. And it's just been a steady ride of really not belonging, not being liked necessarily by others. And that stayed consistent throughout the theme and throughout the arc of their life. The overall impression here is that this group has maintained that experience in some way. It hasn't changed. It hasn't shifted. It's just stayed. And so we're going to call the second group those who were never liked to begin with. It has to be kind of wordier because I can't think of 3 words. Never liked at all? No, never liked, period. I'm using this extreme phrasing to kind of make a point to make sure that these containers are clear so you can know which message is for you. There might be information in both of the parts for both parties because there is an entanglement here with the energy. But the answer to the question that I've posed that probably brought you here that you resonated with is directly related to your experience with others in some very fundamental way. So you'll know this message is for you, whichever container you resonate with, is like you'll have a sentiment of feeling to others around you. Like it could bring out a strong feeling of indifference you have with your experience with others, or it could bring out a really deep response, a really deep reaction. Like you have a deep feeling of not belonging. You have a deep reaction of your loneliness. Something is deeply felt here. And the reason is because it's strongly connected to your life path and your karmic past lives in some very critical way. Okay, so the first group that is being presented here is those who shifted into being liked less. For this first group, this is an important shift. Whether small or large, it's either happened recently or over time, gradually. The shift here is directly related to how you experience other people as a whole and how that connects to your life purpose, your path, your karmic ties to past lives. It's very important in your soul's evolution. In the past, for you in this life, there was some type of belonging or some sort of dance you did with creating belonging that you no longer do anymore or that you're doing much less. It's important because it clearly divides your life in this lifetime. The past version of you clung onto being understood or belonging. And you evolved that version in your present where it doesn't put belonging in front of yourself and your own needs. And that's very important. That is being extremely highlighted here. In other words, you've really stopped abandoning yourself in ways because belonging and being liked made you cling on to these beliefs that conflicted with yours in some very critical way. And so you're at a place, from what I can see here, where it looks like there's not a lot of belonging and there's not a lot of understanding, and a lot of people are perhaps disliking you in very emotionally charged ways. If it's not emotionally charged, you still notice, you still observe it in some way. There's no ability here to ignore this or carry on like it's not happening. You're very aware. There's either an emotion here or there's acknowledgement at the very least. So there's an important message here about how critical this is to your development in some way, about how this path of not belonging really aligns with your soul's evolution, really aligns with your past lives. It's specific to your path because the residue you came here with from past lives was incredibly strong. You've spent a lot of lives living the same karmic lessons and not evolving from that. And this lifetime you're breaking it. There's a hard lesson here of individuation, and you're essentially evolving by individualizing yourself in some way in this lifetime. It shows through the contrast of these situations where you used to struggle and now you really don't. It's easier to put yourself first, to not abandon yourself in these very critical ways, even if it's emotionally charged. The new struggle is in accepting people that don't understand you or like you because you used to try really hard to fix that. You may have what looks like contorted yourself or forced yourself to be likable in some way, and that was extremely difficult. You had to disassociate a lot here. There's a lot of your truest expression that got suppressed over many lifetimes. And so this learning to not abandon yourself is very uncomfortable because you've been disassociating for so many lifetimes. So this waking up process is almost extremely unbearable to you in some way. I don't know if it's emotionally charged. I don't know if it's just uncomfortable, but there's something here that's the acknowledgement of it is difficult. But I really see here the way in which your soul path had to force belonging in the past, in this life, and in other lives is through acts of subtle abandonment that were crucial to you as a person and your expression and your needs. You were born specifically into circumstances where others didn't value the same things that you. So each time you were forced to belong or you overrid your needs, you abandoned some really critical aspect of yourself, really critical part of your soul. By doing this each time, you were brought further away to understand yourself and understand why you're here. And so this disassociation lived very strongly into your bones. I'll just say that. It created a lack of understanding who you are, what you want, your needs throughout many lifetimes. And this is the uncomfortable part is breaking that is now showing you who you are, but it's also deeply uncomfortable because you were forced to disassociate for so long. So now you're in a space learning who you are by rejecting the opinions of others. And over time, this is the main way that you can gauge or track if you are on the path to reaching your highest potential of your soul path through that form of expressions. In other words, there are some really critical karmic lessons here that you were put to break in this lifetime, and a long train of past lives where you subtly abandoned yourself to belong, to be liked. And that's why in this life, it was so easy to kind of keep doing that. It was so easy to repeat that karma, you just kind of fell into disassociating without even a second thought. The lessons keep repeating until that soul actually evolves, but this lifetime, the soul is meant to evolve, and that's why it's so freaking hard. That's why it feels so difficult. I see in this life being where you break this karmic pattern, and the train that follows is substantially different in next lifetimes, in the second half of this lifetime. But right now, it's so unbearably lonely and isolating at times that your soul has never experienced this. It's only experienced disassociation and fake belonging. So it feels like something's wrong right now. And that's a deep pattern that lives within you because of those past lives. That's why it feels so unbearable. And so overall, there's going to be a period here and this is where this message is like kind of, I guess, guiding you to an answer, is there's going to be a period here where you have deep loneliness and discomfort with not being liked or not belonging. That's going to bring up some sort of feeling deep within you. But it's temporary here because the energy shifting around you is bringing in truer connections where you actually feel belonging. You don't have to fake anything. You don't have to pretend. You'll feel like you're able to both be liked and not have to abandon your inner self and your expression and your morals and your beliefs. You won't have to disassociate from all of that. Like it was kind of like on autopilot for a lot of this life and a lot of previous life. So for now, this temporary space, there's a signal for you. And that is being measured by how disliked you are in this current liminal space. So the answer to the question is how to know you're on the right path in this integration space is you will feel discomfort of others not liking you or actively misunderstanding you, and it will grow worse. And interestingly enough, that discomfort, that response from others is actually confirming you're on the correct path to individualizing yourself as a person, as a soul, and attracting that deeper belonging that you've always craved. So it's the best sign that you're actually moving forward in the right space towards being liked for who you deeply are rather than who you have to pretend to be. It's like you're shedding these surroundings of people who are not aligned with you, and it's going to feel weird for a little bit while they recognize the real you and they reject that because they want the fake you. And it's actually the truest sign that upcoming connections and deeper belonging are coming is feeling that rejection, feeling that misunderstanding, feeling disliked. The harder that comes in, the more you're aligned on your path. You want to feel misunderstood right now. You don't want these connections. They don't see you. They don't have the potential to ever see you. So embrace that feeling of like, okay, these people don't like me. Good. You don't want connections right now in this space to actually like you for that fake version of yourself. You want to be sternly disliked as you recalibrate to this higher state where you're calling in connections that can actually see you and you don't have to disassociate or be fake to belong anymore. So to answer the question for group one, the biggest signal, the biggest confirmation you can have is more people actively disliking you, more people actively rejecting you. Good. That is very good. And that is only temporary. It will not be like that forever. Okay, now we're going to move on to group two. And I get the sense right away that this group will be significantly smaller. It could be more of a perception fault that occurs here, so be wary of that, is where in retrospect you believe that you have never been liked, but more than often you were more liked, even slightly at a certain point, and you've just kind of grown slowly more intolerable to forcing belonging, to forcing being liked. However, for those who know, really truly know for certain that they are actually part of this very, very small group, it's just been the same level of dislike and lack of belonging. And that has been consistent. And it is very rare that it is like that, but it will be for a very small group. Your message is going to be slightly different because your soul path is different in shape and energy. If you didn't watch the first half, I would, just so you can understand the first group and how you're kind of contrasting them in a specific way. The last group had karmic ties to abandoning themselves. That was very clear, is they had spent many lives abandoning themselves to belong. But you are actually more involved in breaking a pattern of isolation, and it looks and feels much different. There's a deep karmic lesson here for this group, for you, about distrust for others and the isolation that comes through that feels like a form of safety for you. So in past lives, you could have really struggled to belong, but been like a genius in isolation, some sort of creative master, some sort of like prodigy, but it wasn't like you were disassociating to force belonging like the last group. You weren't abandoning yourself. In fact, you never really had issues abandoning yourself in that specific way. It was more of an active rejection of all communities and external connections. The extreme opposite, almost like never abandoning yourself. So your lesson in this lifetime that you're actively breaking in some way is going to be confirmed to you by your ability to tolerate connection in some way. And I guess I have to explain that because that's kind of confusing. Is like similar to the last group, they are feeling immense discomfort from not belonging, from not being liked, from isolation, but you might not experience that same discomfort. You've always known that on some level. You've always known the discomfort of isolation, of not being liked. So it doesn't feel as strongly reactive to you. What makes the most discomfort for you is actually pushing your boundaries. It's trying to connect with others even a little bit and how uncomfortable it feels to let people in and to try to belong and try to be liked. That is the discomfort for you that lives with this past life karma. So this is a little bit more of a complicated message. I'm not saying to go abandon yourself to belong. Definitely not. It's actually just saying something very specific, which is kind of, it's difficult to articulate it, is almost like through the practice of removing your strong boundaries that you have, the walls that you have, you'll begin to attract those people who deeply see you. You cannot do this through isolation. You cannot do this with your strong boundaries. Your path is more focused on practicing than focusing on waiting for the perfect community or person to find you. As where path one, as they actively reject, they are calling in without doing anything. Yours is more focused on action because you are kind of like the polarity of them. Let me say this in a different way. Where the other group is kind of being asked to sit in discomfort of not being liked, you are being asked to sit in the discomfort of trial and error through pushing your self boundaries. This looks like going to more social things, embracing connections that are not perfect and that have a lot of issues, but it's forcing you to interact and remove your boundaries to some extent. And it's almost like exposure therapy is your message here, because for you, it's not about the connection itself. It's not about waiting for that perfect thing. It's about practicing with your boundary levels. The boundaries have the karmic lessons, and because you were really badly betrayed in some deep way in past lives, this boundary has stayed intact, and it is something that is familiar to you. It is something that you came here like with residue of. So that's why it was so natural to have these deep boundaries, is they are a karmic energy that you've carried through many lives. It is one you are breaking in this life. You may be more aware of your boundaries. You may be more aware of your walls. That's purposeful. That's for a reason. But here's the thing, is that isolation and these boundaries will not break the karmic cycle. It is actually through tolerating the feeling of imperfect belonging and imperfect connections that opens you up slowly to finding perfection over time. It's just you have to practice being open to imperfect things more frequently. You cannot just reject everything that's imperfect. It's almost like your message here is truly exposure related, is like the betrayal of this karma that runs so deep has closed you off automatically to so many things. You will not betray yourself. You have experienced that too frequently. And so now you hold that energy very tightly. And so the answer to your question is your highest timeline comes when you break that safety, when you start experimenting with the feeling of being liked, even if it's imperfectly liked, even if it's not for your entire self because they cannot see that. It's just your signal, your gauge to knowing you're on the path of higher awareness, higher integration, is that you're actually just experimenting with being liked even imperfectly, even for small little parts of you. It's not that you're being asked to fake anything or abandon yourself. It's actually that you're being asked to expose yourself in multiple connections until subtle forms of liking you happen in different ways. And that energy will start to compound over time. And then eventually what we would call perfection will be attracted to you because you've been playing with this energy of being liked so frequently, even if imperfectly. So I guess what I'm really trying to say here is your confirmation of your highest path, the way that in which you can get confirmation you're on that path, the way you can tell is imperfect ways of being liked or accepted over and over again until it manifests in its truest form for you, until it manifests in its highest form. So you're not doomed to imperfection or slightly tolerable belonging. You're actually just practicing that energy until the real one manifests before you. Your life path involves a lot more action than the first life path. I see some of you, this might be a confirmation, like you might be playing with imperfect energies at this time, external connections that are like, but for others who have buckled down on solitude or isolation as the answer, there might be a warning here for your life path to involve more friction in action. And it's kind of showing you through that friction that you're on a higher path. If you're comfortable for too long, there's definitely a warning here. Both of you, both souls, will be uncomfortable just in the opposite ways, is what it's seeming like here. Your signal is discomfort. Welcome. Episode 11 awaits us today. I don't know if I will ever truly accept that you guys love me as much as I love you, because the fact that you want to hear about me is so weirdly surreal. I'm kind of like waiting for the day that there are no comments about the salt talks, but you guys love them so much. So I will never stop doing them until I'm told otherwise, that it's corny and that you hate it. So we persist. Okay, sometimes I do cheat. I do look at my notebook of comments that have resonated with me. Yes, I do jot down notes when you guys leave me comments and the energy is potent. I'm not like a superhuman who can remember all of the things. In fact, a lot of the times when I'm doing assault talks, to try to keep it raw and go off the top of my head, as I sit here completely useless and empty. So sometimes I cheat. I will say that. You need to know that. It feels important. So today, let us see. Here's a good one. Oh, I don't think I've even expanded on this in my own brain. The problem with my notebook, here's the fault in my method, is I jot things down that I don't expand on. It's kind of like a one sentence, one liner. And it's very much sometimes me just verbally processing it here for the first time with you all. And so here's what I have written down on the page in the exact words that I'll quote for you is I wrote down the salt standard. With 3 dots at the end of it. Okay, I think this came from a few comments, so I want to talk about this. This is a majority of energy I get thrown my way. I also love that in some way I kind of branded it or gave it a name to live under. Like, the salt standard is essentially an unintentional benchmark I created by being myself, by being too transparent online. And let's talk about it a little bit. It kind of relates to the contradiction salt talks that I had in the past. I'll put it somewhere what episode it is. I don't know off the top of my head, but if you're interested in that, I talked about where you guys all said that I was a contradiction and clarified things like that. I'll put it here. But I feel I need to have almost 20 salt talks to really clarify this energy of contradiction to you all, because it has so many different layers. Like, duality is a part of it, but here's another part of this is the salt standard. The salt standard is like me being so much more different than other readers online. And I know you guys know that. I know it. I'm not like the other moms. I'm the cool mom. It's not pick me energy, but it can come off that way because I don't shy away from it. Is there's a price to this salt standard. And here's what the price is. The price is reading collective energy to some extent will always have similar patterns and shapes, especially online. So for example, readings that the collective will have in their energy very often, and I've told you guys this before, but things like love messages and hope messages will still exist. Just because I point out that they can be bad for you doesn't mean they don't still come up in the energy. And so the problem that I face as a reader is if I even slightly produce a reading that resembles other readers, I'm called out about it. And I don't want you guys to get angry. People aren't calling me out in a bad way. I want to explain how their energy actually comes through to me, how I see it, because I don't interpret it as hate in the way that it might sound. I think it has really good intentions when people do this, but it is a projection. The way it comes through to me is being betrayed by other readers and having a fear of that and putting that on me. So like, for example, when people hold me accountable to stay different and authentic, when they leave me comments like, you're being just like all the other readers, or I thought you were so special and unique, and here you are talking about hope, stuff like that. Those people have probably experienced some sort of reader that they trusted very deeply, and that reader might have gone down the wrong path over time. Like eventually the reader could have become self-serving. They could have strayed from the collective well-being in some way. They experienced some sort of betrayal. It's like I'm the next partner that some of you have, but some of you have a little bit of ex trauma, like you were cheated on. And so you kind of project that I'm going to cheat on you. That's kind of how the energy comes through to me, is it's fear of betrayal to some degree. So I don't see it as pressure, I see it as what you guys show me in your energy, which can feel a little exposing, I'm sure, but I don't want you guys to think that I get discouraged by these comments because I can see the energy, I can feel the energy, so it doesn't affect me in the way that it might affect someone who takes it at face value. On my end, here's my opinion, here's my thoughts is this is a challenge to work through because it's impossible to live up to the SALT standard. What it does in a way is it corners me into a ridiculous benchmark that I can only be unique. I can never slightly resemble anybody else. And that's not how energy reading works. It has a lot of repetition. It is redundant. It's usually picking up the heavy energy readings to some degree. So it's usually common that you see the same type of message in different formats at the same time is readers are picking up on the same message but interpreting it differently perhaps. So here's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's impossible to meet the SALT standard 100% of the time. It's a fake standard that's kind of imposed by people's fears. It comes from betrayal. It comes from a lot of things. But the truth is, you can have that fear, but leaving those comments are not going to stop me. If for some reason I turned evil tomorrow and decided I was self-serving, those comments would do nothing. It's really just showing these people something about themselves to reflect on. I guess I want to say, trust me when I say I am very devoted and have a lot of loyalty to protecting this space. And I'm not going to suddenly buy out and become different because I literally can't. It is something in my brain that will not. So don't worry if that brings you any comfort. If you are that person leaving those comments, do not worry. I'm not going to betray you. I hope this brings you some sort of comfort, but only time will tell. Words mean nothing at the end of the day. So I also want to kind of talk about something that just came up for me as I went through all this betrayal talk is like, it's actually really understandable that a lot of people have this fear about readers kind of betraying them or a channel becoming shitty over time is there's actually a term for it and it exists in all aspects of our lives, not just online readers. It's called the inshittification cycle. It's basically something that happens in so many different ways in our life in products and services. So we've seen it in so many ways. And what it does is it locks people in with trust and eventually they can't leave because they have no other options. And so that product or service then has the power to deteriorate or become shitty over time. And a really good example of this model is Amazon. I think we've all seen this concept happen in real time over the years with Amazon is this product slowly became the source. It became something where people relied on it. There's no real competition for it now. And so slowly but surely they've been shitifying their product, their model, their services. We could see this happen for everything is what I'm just trying to say is this is not always tied to betrayal in the sense of a reader. We've seen this shitification process happen on so many levels. And so it's only natural that we would have a little bit of fear or we would doubt someone's intentions that say that they have good intentions. Is money and I guess influence change people. It changes products, it shitifies things, but I want you all to rest assured that I will not shitify. If anything, I'll just become weirder and more comfortable with my weirdness, which, I mean, good luck with all that. Anyway, please keep leaving comments if you're new here. I'm actually proud of this SALT Talks being your first SALT Talks to ever experience. I hope you enjoyed learning about the shitification process because now you'll probably see it everywhere. It exists in all parts of our lives. No one is immune to it, I think. But keep leaving comments, keep nudging me, keep sending me your energy. If you're new, the way in which I can be so specific in my readings is simply because of this communicational space I protect. Think of your comments to me as like energy nudges. It helps me channel for you more efficiently. And I always want to be able to do that. I love you guys immensely. Cheers, friends.